She thought she could step on anyone in front of the busiest restaurant in town. A hungry man begged for just one plate of food. But to the manager, he was nothing but a nuisance. "Get out before I call the police," she snapped, her voice echoing through the dining room while customers pretended not to notice. What she didn't know is that this man had a past that could turn her entire world upside down. And in less than a week, she would be the one on her knees, begging for help from the very man she humiliated. If you want to know exactly how this shocking twist unfolds, make sure you subscribe. Hit the like button and stay with me until the very end, because trust me, you won't see this ending coming. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the small downtown street. Inside La Belle Cuisine, the air was warm with the smell of freshly baked bread and roasted garlic. Waiters rushed between tables, balancing trays, while the low hum of conversation filled the space. Near the entrance, a man stood, his clothes worn, hair tangled, and eyes hollow with hunger. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched a battered backpack to his chest. He didn't step inside. He simply lingered in the doorway, gazing at the food as though it might save him. The manager noticed him instantly. A tall woman in her early 40s. She wore a fitted black blazer and heels that clicked sharply against the tile floor. Her name was Vanessa Crow, and she prided herself on keeping the restaurant classy, at least in her own eyes. Her heels stopped just inches from the man. She tilted her head, a smile curling at the corner of her lips. But it was the kind of smile that cuts. "Sir," she began, her voice dripping with contempt, "you can't stand here. You're scaring away my customers." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came, just a quiet rasp of breath. "I'm just hungry," he finally whispered. Vanessa's smile vanished. "This is a restaurant, not a shelter," she snapped. Her voice was loud now, meant for others to hear. "We serve paying customers. You understand what that means, right?" Several diners glanced up from their meals. Some looked away quickly, as if they hadn't seen anything. Others simply watched in silence. The waitstaff avoided eye contact, except for one young busboy in the corner who froze mid-step. His eyes locked on the scene. The man lowered his head. I wasn't asking for much. Just enough." Vanessa's voice cut like a whip. "Leave that now, or I'll have the police remove you." The busboy's hands tightened around the tray he was holding. He wanted to speak up, but Vanessa was his boss, and she had fired people for far less. The man took a step back, his face crumpling with shame. He turned away slowly, each movement heavy with defeat, before disappearing into the street. Vanessa straightened her blazer, turned to the nearest table, and smiled as if nothing had happened. But at that very moment, fate had already begun to turn against her. The restaurant felt different now. The laughter that had been floating through the air only moments earlier was gone, replaced by a heavy, uncomfortable silence. Forks scraped against plates, glasses clinked softly. But the mood had shifted, and everyone knew why. Vanessa moved between tables with a forced elegance, pretending she hadn't just thrown a starving man into the street. But she could feel it, the eyes on her. At the corner booth, an elderly couple whispered to each other. The woman's gaze followed Vanessa with open disapproval. Near the bar, a young man in a hoodie shook his head slowly, muttering something under his breath to his friend. Even the waitstaff avoided looking at her, their movements stiff, mechanical. "Everything all right here?" Vanessa asked a table of 3, flashing her signature customer service smile. The man at the table didn't smile back. "Yeah," he said flatly, before returning to his plate. It wasn't the reaction she expected. Vanessa prided herself on her ability to charm, but in this moment, no one seemed charmed. And deep down, she knew why. The young busboy, still shaken, ducked into the kitchen. He leaned against the wall, gripping the edge of a counter. The image of the man's defeated face burned in his mind. He didn't deserve that. Through the kitchen door, he could still hear murmurs from the dining area. "Some people have no heart," one woman muttered. "If that were me, I'd be ashamed," another voice added. Vanessa pretended she didn't hear. She told herself she was doing her job, protecting her restaurant. But a small, bitter thought whispered at the back of her mind, "They don't understand. I have standards to keep." Outside, the man she had thrown out sat on the curb a block away. He lowered his backpack to the ground and pulled his coat tighter around himself. Passersby barely noticed him. To them, he was invisible. But in that invisibility, he was planning. His name was Daniel Rhodes, though no one at La Belle Cuisine cared enough to ask. Only a year ago, Daniel's life looked nothing like this. He had worn tailored suits, driven a sleek black sedan, and lived in a condo overlooking the river. He'd been a chef, not just any chef, but one of the most respected in the city. He had built his reputation in fine dining over the decades, earning awards and glowing reviews in magazines. But fate had an appetite for cruelty. First came the accident. A drunk driver ran a red light, shattering Daniel's leg and leaving him in the hospital for months. The restaurant he co-owned struggled without him. Bills piled up. His partner, once a friend, sold the business behind his back, leaving Daniel with nothing. Then came the eviction notice. By the time he could walk without crutches, Daniel was already sleeping in shelters. He applied for jobs, even washing dishes, but every manager looked at his worn clothes and weary face and said no. Now, he survived on odd jobs, sleeping wherever he could find shelter from the cold. But no matter how far he fell, one thing stayed with him: his knowledge of the restaurant world. He knew every supplier in town, every health inspector, every whisper of gossip that could make or break an eatery. And when Vanessa threw him out that night, she unknowingly insulted someone who could dismantle her world with a single phone call. Daniel sat on the curb, watching the restaurant lights glow in the distance. The smell of roasted garlic and seared steak drifted through the night air. His stomach twisted in hunger, but his heart burned with something far stronger. She thinks I'm nobody. She'll regret that. Chapter 4. The manager's arrogance. The next evening, La Belle Cuisine was buzzing again. Clinking glasses, polished silverware, and the warm glow of candlelight dancing across white tablecloths. Vanessa Crowe moved through the dining room like a queen surveying her court. She loved nights like this, busy, profitable, and filled with the city's right kind of people. Table 6 is sending back their wine, a waiter said softly, approaching her with a bottle in hand. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Then suggest something more expensive. And make sure they know it's expensive. The waiter hesitated, but nodded and walked away. Vanessa wasn't just managing a restaurant. In her mind, she was curating an experience. And that experience didn't include undesirables hanging around her doorway. She bragged to a group of regulars at the bar, her voice carrying over the chatter. Some guy tried to come in yesterday, looking like he'd just crawled out of a dumpster. I had to throw him out before he scared off my customers. A couple laughed politely. Another man chuckled, shaking his head. That's the thing, Vanessa continued, sipping her wine. You have to keep standards high. People pay for class, and I make sure they get it. In the kitchen, the young busboy overheard her words. His jaw tightened. He remembered the look on Daniel's face, the quiet humiliation. But Vanessa didn't see the problem. She was convinced she'd done the right thing. She always was. What she didn't realize was that every arrogant word she spoke was setting the stage for a downfall she would never see coming. Later that night, after the dinner rush had slowed, the young busboy stepped outside for a smoke break. The alley behind La Belle Cuisine was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator units and the faint sound of traffic a block away. He didn't expect to see Daniel there, sitting on a milk crate, hunched over, shivering in the cold night air. The busboy froze for a moment. He glanced over his shoulder to make sure no one was watching, then walked toward him. "Hey, you still hungry?" he asked quietly. Daniel looked up, his eyes tired but alert. "I'm always hungry," he said, managing a faint smile. The busboy pulled a plastic container from under his jacket. Inside was a portion of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans, leftovers from a plate that had been sent back earlier. "It's not much," the busboy said, handing it over, "but it's fresh." Daniel accepted it slowly, as if unsure whether to trust it. "You didn't have to do this." "Yeah, I did," the busboy replied, lighting his cigarette. "The way she treated you, it wasn't right." Daniel ate in silence for a moment, savoring every bite. The warmth of the food spread through him, but it wasn't just the heat that mattered. It was the humanity behind it. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. Eli, the busboy said, exhaling smoke into the night. Daniel nodded. Thank you, Eli. You're a good man. Eli hesitated, then leaned closer. Look, if you ever need something, I'll help. I don't care what Vanessa says. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Careful, Eli. I might just take you up on that. Eli didn't know what Daniel meant, but those words carried a quiet, deliberate weight. 3 days later, La Belle Cuisine was in chaos. It started with a phone call early in the morning. Vanessa had been sipping her coffee when the health department informed her that the restaurant had been flagged for an urgent inspection. Urgent? Why? She demanded. The inspector's tone was cold. We've received several complaints, anonymous, but detailed. We take these seriously. Expect us. At noon, Vanessa's heart raced. She kept the place spotless, at least on the surface. But she knew there were corners cut, expired ingredients she didn't throw away, kitchen equipment in desperate need of repair, storage areas she hadn't checked in months. By the time the inspector arrived, Vanessa was barking orders like a drill sergeant. Wipe everything. Hide those boxes. And for God's sake, don't mention the freezer leak. The inspection lasted 2 hours. The inspector took notes quietly, asked pointed questions, and left without revealing anything. That silence worried her more than anything. 2 days later, the letter arrived. Temporary closure for multiple violations. Vanessa's hands shook as she read it. A closure, even temporary, meant canceled reservations, lost revenue, and whispers in the local dining scene. Her reputation would take a hit she might never recover from. That evening, she sat at the bar in her empty restaurant, staring at the darkened dining room. Her pride burned hotter than her fear. Someone had set her up. But who? What Vanessa didn't know was that Daniel had spent the last week making quiet phone calls to suppliers, to former co-workers, and yes, to the health department. And this was only the beginning. By the end of the week, Vanessa's phone wouldn't stop ringing, not with customers, but with suppliers demanding payment. The closure had set off a chain reaction. Fresh produce she'd ordered was spoiling in the storage room, meat deliveries were canceled, and a catering contract worth thousands had been pulled at the last minute. But the worst blow came in the form of a letter from her bank. Her business loan was being reviewed for default. If she couldn't prove she could reopen soon, the bank would foreclose on the property. Vanessa sat in her office, staring at the pile of invoices. She ran her fingers through her hair, the first signs of real panic creeping in. She needed help, and not just money. She needed someone with connections in the food industry. Someone who could call in favors and smooth things over with suppliers and inspectors alike. She thought of the chefs she'd worked with over the years. Most hated her. Former employees? Even worse, her so-called friends in the business, all conveniently too busy to take her calls. Then, one of her bartenders wandered into the office. You know, he said cautiously, there's a guy knows everyone in this town. Used to be one of the top chefs here. Rumor is, he can still get things done, even if the doors are closed. Vanessa looked up sharply. Who? The bartender hesitated. Daniel Rhodes. The name hit her like ice watered down her back. The memory of his face, standing in her doorway, hungry, humiliated, flashed in her mind. That bum, she scoffed. He wasn't always like that, the bartender said. People still respect him. If anyone can pull strings to get you reopened, it's him. Vanessa wanted to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. She hated the idea, but the truth was unavoidable. Daniel Rhodes might be her only hope. It was just after sunset when Vanessa found herself walking down a dimly lit side street she would normally avoid. The air smelled faintly of damp concrete and exhaust fumes. She spotted him sitting on a worn wooden bench outside a rundown community center. A paper coffee cup cradled in his hands. His hair was messier than she remembered, his coat even more threadbare, but there was something in his posture that hadn't changed. Quiet dignity. Vanessa stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure of how to begin. Daniel, she said, her voice stiff. He looked up slowly. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something colder. Well, he said softly, if it isn't the queen of La Belle Cuisine. She forced a small laugh that sounded more like a cough. I need to talk to you. Daniel didn't answer right away. He simply took a sip of his coffee, letting the silence stretch between them. Finally, he tilted his head. "Last time we spoke, you were telling me to get out of your doorway before you called the police. Now you're, what? Inviting me in." Her cheeks flushed. "I made a mistake," she admitted through clenched teeth. "I shouldn't have treated you like that. But right now, my restaurant is closed, my suppliers are threatening to cut me off, and I'm about to lose everything. I need connections. Someone who can fix this." Daniel leaned back against the bench, studying her face as if he were reading a book he already knew the ending to. "And you think I'm that someone?" "You are," she said, her tone urgent now. "People still respect you. I know you can make calls, get things moving. Please, I'm willing to pay you." Daniel's lips curved into a slow, humorless smile. "Vanessa, you couldn't afford what I'd charge." She swallowed hard, but didn't look away. "So what do you want?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "I want to think about it. Come back tomorrow night. We'll talk then." Vanessa showed up at the community kitchen the very next morning. It was nothing like La Belle Cuisine. The walls were faded, the air smelled faintly of boiled vegetables, and the tables were mismatched. But the people who came through those doors, the hungry, the tired, the forgotten, looked at this place like it was salvation. Daniel was already there, wearing a simple apron, greeting everyone with genuine warmth. He didn't even acknowledge her at first, just handed her a stack of dishes. "Sink's over there," he said. For the first hour, she washed plates in silence. Her hands ached, her back throbbed. This wasn't the kind of work she was used to. But then she started to notice the faces, people thanking her, smiling at her, speaking to her like she was human, not a manager or a boss. At lunch, Daniel asked her to serve the line. Vanessa hesitated, but stepped up. A young woman with 2 children approached, and when Vanessa handed her a plate, the woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Something inside Vanessa shifted. It wasn't instant redemption, but it was the first crack in the armor she had worn for years. Days turned into a week. She kept coming back, kept serving, kept listening. Daniel kept his word. He made the calls, smoothed things over with suppliers, even convinced the health department to clear her for reopening. But when the day came, she didn't feel like celebrating. She stood in her gleaming restaurant, looking out the window at the city, and realized she would never again see the world the same way. Daniel walked in quietly, hands in his pockets. "You're open again," he said. "Yes," she replied. "Because of you." He nodded. "No, Vanessa. Because you learned." She didn't argue. She just smiled faintly, the weight of her pride finally slipping away. "If you stayed until the end, you've seen how karma can turn the tables in ways no one expects." For more stories like this, full of twists, raw emotion, and endings you'll never forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. And when you're done, don't stop here. Watch my other videos for even more unbelievable stories that will keep you hooked until the very last second.